The Supreme Court is poised to consider an important, potentially landmark legal plea on whether or not to reduce the age of consent for sex from 18 to 16 years in India. On one hand, reducing the age of consent could encourage more open discussion, education, and sexual health services rather than driving teenage sex underground. On the other hand, the change will not address the myriad socio-cultural factors including lack of sex education, gender-based power dynamics and child grooming. Could we be falling for a quote liberal ideal without realizing the pitfalls that come with it, as is the case with most liberal policies? After all, there is no great data out there to suggest that lowering consent age actually helps in more informed sexual behavior and prevents abuse or teenage pregnancies. The union government has strongly opposed any such move, warning that it will dilute child protection laws, increase risks of abuse and undermine India's obligations even under the UNCRC. While those for it argue that the current law is violative of constitutional rights of adolescents and are being misused under POCSO acts. Critics of the suggestion to lower consent argue that 18 is not an arbitrary number arrived at. It's a scientific and social sweet spot. And lowering it could lead to unintended consequences. And when it comes to decriminalizing consensual teen sex, police and courts already exercise discretion in separating genuine cases from those that may involve abuse or illegality. So, the big question is, will lowering sex consent age really help or hurt our teenagers? And we'll take that to our guest joining us in just a bit. But first up, let me break down the rationale that has been presented. It is not only about what has happened in 2025 or the last 2 months. This has been a debate that has been ongoing for quite a few years in India. So the number one reasoning that is given is that this will reduce unfair criminalization of consensual teenage relationships. Teenagers should not become embroiled in legal cases just because they were engaging in a sexual activity, as long as both are minors, of course. This will also recognize evolving capacities and maturity of adolescents. Basically, it's social realism. You cannot shut your eyes to the fact that many teenagers are already sexually active. It will also prevent, as some argue, the misuse of POCSO Act in intercaste or inter-religious cases, where the allegation is that parents are embroiling children with these cases when there are such facets involved, even if the relationship was consensual to begin with. And that this will promote access to safer sexual and reproductive health care. But this is a big question mark in a developing country like India, if that is actually the case. We can't really adopt what developed countries do. Their systems and capacities are completely different. So let me now break down the possible pitfalls. Lowering the age of sexual consent may inadvertently make it easier, even for adults, to engage in sexual relationships with minors. It can lead to an increasing risk of grooming, coercion, exploitation. The power imbalance between adults and minors can make true informed consent very difficult to establish, even in adult relationships. Consent is a very, very fickle concept. It's a very difficult concept to establish. Lowering the age of consent may send a wrong societal signal that early sexual activity is acceptable. It could potentially lead to increased rates of teenage pregnancies, STDs, emotional trauma that comes along with many such cases. And while comparisons to developed countries are made, India doesn't quite have the same capacities for sex education currently. And without that, lowering can be more harmful than helpful for this bracket of teenagers between 16 to 18. Now, if the court agrees to lower the age of consent, this would be the first time in India that the age is actually being reduced. Historically, the age has only been increased to finally reach to 18. So in 1860, the age of consent defined for a woman by virtue of section 375 of the IPC that defined rape was set at 10 years. By 1891, the age of consent for a woman was raised to 12. In 1925, age of consent was raised to 14 years, and in 1940, just before independence, age of consent was raised to 16 years, where it remained up till 2012. And since 2012, when POCSO was enacted, the age of consent has been raised to 18. And it's not just about age of consent in POCSO or when it comes to sexual behavior. In all Indian laws, a child is defined as a person under the age of 18 years. So, bringing down the age for consensual sex would actually make a lot of other laws incompatible, and it will need a whole-scale revision of who is defined as a child in many such laws. So, will legalizing sex at 16 amongst teenagers really help or hurt our teenagers? That debate is coming up.
This case was filed to stop brutal offenders, not to redefine the law on teenage relationships.
Let's go across to our guest joining us. Swati Goyal Sharma is a journalist, managing editor, Rashtra Jyoti. Ashwini Dubey, advocate, Supreme Court. Both are opposing the suggestions to lower the age of consent. Satya Mule and Ashutosh Srivastav, advocates, are also joining us. They are pro the lowering of age of consent. I want to begin with Satya Mule, because one of the biggest arguments that have been made for lowering the age of consent is that somehow teenagers are being persecuted for consensual sexual activity. But is there any proof to suggest that? It's not like police and courts are running around, trying to find these teenagers who may be sexually active and pry on their relationships. If they're going on, they're going on. Yes, we can debate that separately. But it's not like there's any case to be made out that teenagers are being persecuted for it.
It is not that the teenagers are being persecuted by the police system or, for that matter, any other state machinery. But it is definitely a case that the laws per se, the way they are today, are resulting into some kind of persecution which is unjustifiable. If we take data from the states such as Maharashtra, New Delhi, or similar states which are more progressive when compared to other states, we have come to a conclusion wherein in last 5 years, approximately 30% of prosecutions that have happened of underage accused have been identified from cases where there was consensual sexual activity, but have had to face the brunt of the law because of the mechanical provisions, and have not allowed the judiciary to look at the particular cases in more humane manner. This is the reality.
Swati, how would you argue with this? Because the reality is that teenagers are sexually active more and more so. Good or bad, that's a moral debate for another day. But if they are engaging in sexual activity, should we be criminalizing those above 16 as well?
Okay, so Shivani, there are a lot of issues in this. First of all, I would like to say that this was a bogus argument that male partners between 16 and 18 are being harassed or being, wrongly penalized for consensual sex. Number one, there is a provision already in law to not implicate such, or let's say, such teenage. We don't have to try such teenagers under POCSO. We can always try them under Juvenile Justice Act. In fact, what we should be asking is that such teenagers, basically under 18 male partners who are also children, they should be tried under the Juvenile Act, which means they basically are questioned, and based on the psychological counseling, they're either sent to correction homes or even their own homes, and no data is maintained. So, unless the child in counseling turns out to be, of a criminal mindset, then such a child may not even face any law, But
is that being applied? Satya Mule's argument is that courts don't have that kind of discretion, not as much discretion.
Yeah, courts have such discretion. It should be implemented. Number two, when we ask, just because this is not being implemented, we are asking for age of consent to be lowered. And you have to understand what are the arguments given by the other side, which is number one, teens have a fundamental right to joy. I'm literally quoting from an article in an Indian Express. Teens have right to sexual autonomy. What you are not considering is that under teen sex, I mean, if you have sexual activity at 16, it's neurologically unsound, it's socially regressive, and it's a gift to predators. Science has proven that the frontal part of the brain is not developed enough at 16 to, it acts on impulse. So it's not right to indulge in such activities. You cannot legally allow such activities because the brain is not that developed. Number two, the direct consequence of allowing this is teen pregnancy. It will, dramatically increase teen pregnancy. Who is going to bear the burden of it? The state. Number three, in teen pregnancy, science has proven, and we have published a whole research report about it. It's there on my portal, Rashjyoti. And when mothers at the age of 20, they face hypertension disorders all through their lives, and the children born to mothers who are less than 20, they have lower IQ.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page that it has been scientifically proven that the younger the mother is, both the mother and the child are at greater risk of various developmental issues and otherwise. And I think prioritizing the life of the mother and the quality of her life is also very important. I firmly believe that. In fact, you raised the issue of teen pregnancies. Swati, with that, I want to go across to Ashutosh Srivastav, who's also pro lowering the age of consent. Not only can Ashutosh lowering the age of consent and therefore legalizing sex between ages of 16 to 18 between minors of themselves, not only will this lead to teen pregnancies, we have a law where under 18 marriages are not allowed. So you're creating a situation where you could have teen mothers, but they can't get married. So what happens? You either have teen pregnancies or single mothers or children out of wedlock. That's not what we want to promote in society, right?
See, first of all, that the constitutional rights of even the teens have to be seen in that way, because see, if somebody is matured enough as to what he or she is doing, I think their consent should be respected. If you consider many of the countries, whether it is US, UK, they have the age of consent around 16. If you see China, it is 14. So most of the countries in the world, they have the consent age between 14 to 16 years. This is what is the data.
Has it helped them?
Now, even,
no, 1 second.
now,
Just because they have that is no excuse. Has it helped them?
Even in India before 2012, it was 16 years only. Now the question arises that how can you policing about the relationship about the teenagers if they have this kind of consent under which they want to go and just do
that's
something
why I
like
began
that.
by asking, is the police going around houses and figuring out whether teenagers are having sex if they're not doing that?
So no, but section 19 of POCSO says so. It mandates that if anybody who is aware of that this kind of relationship can exist or it is already existing, they must inform the police, and the police has to do actions. They have to come into actions and take, whatever the law says to do. They can arrest also there. The FIR can be registered.
So you're saying
the question, Mike, the question arises: what is the point of punishing such? People who are doing any such kind of act with the consent of the minor. Now, if you say, just now my friend said about Juvenile Justice Act. Now we have the instances, even if you see section 11 and 15 of Juvenile Justice Act, which says that if a teenager above 16 years and below 18 years is matured enough to commit a crime, he should be treated as an adult, and he or she should be tried as an adult. Then why not in these cases? I'm talking about the existing laws only. So when you say that a teenager cannot be punished under the same law, but they can be prosecuted under the Juvenile Justice Act. So I'm talking about now Juvenile Justice Act. It also says that, and even in the courts, if you see, many of the courts have given judgments and they have quashed many such proceedings which were initiated when there was consent of the minors, between 16 to 18 years, on case-to-case basis. So I think this
so that's what I'm saying, that if already there seems to be a capacity within the legal judicial system that if they see that this is a genuine case of consensual sex between minors of a certain age, they take a relaxed approach or give them a leeway. Nobody wants to destroy lives just because teenagers
This
were
is what is
exploring sexuality.
nobody.
No, we are all
So
on the
if
same page
nobody,
on that.
no, if nobody wants to destroy the life, then obviously there has to be some changes which are
Okay, so that
required to be
brings
made.
me. No, you didn't answer my question about what happens to teenage mothers, because you cannot
Even if you
deny the
see,
fact that we don't
yes.
have the capacities either to have very, regularized, focused sexual health, education, promotion of contraceptions, etc. So this could
No,
lead to
that is,
teenage. This
see,
could
that
lead to
that
teenage pregnancies.
no,
But
if
those
we do
teenage
not, if
mothers. No, one second. Those teenage couples cannot marry. So fundamentally, what you're asking
no,
for
that
is
is,
that
that
the
is,
age
that
of
is, that,
marriage will also be brought down.
see, see, if you see the United Nations, the United Nations also says that the age of marriage should be 18, but it has not limited any age for to have any, to have consent. There is no age for that in many of the
So tell
countries,
me,
and
what happens to
they,
teenage mothers?
no, but
They're single mothers
see,
at
the
16?
education, see, providing education is one part of it. See, even at the age of 18, if there is pregnancy, then how what protection, how it has to be protected. So the age is not an issue here.
No, one
I
second.
think
There is an issue.
16.
No, one second. Ashutosh,
No,
there is an issue. I'll bring Ashwini Dubey into this. The problem is that yes, you could be in a consensual relationship, you could be pregnant out of a consensual relationship, you could be 18 and above. At least in that case, if the couple is quote unquote mature enough, and everybody's talking about this as if they are, we don't know whether a 16, 17, 18-year-old is mature enough. But let's say I give it to you that at 18 you're mature enough, you're an adult, you've been told all your life at 18 you have to take responsibility for your actions. They can at least choose to get married. But if a 16-year-old couple, boy and girl, they get pregnant out of wedlock, they can't marry for another 2 years. So effectively, Ashwini, you're saying in such cases, you should also lower the age of marriage. Eventually, it will lead to that.
Shivani, the urban ideology cannot reflect the Indian reality. Why? The only thing which is being argued, and those activists who propose policy as if the entire nation attends global standard schools and lives in a feminist friendly families. Law must protect the weakest, not serve the fantasies of the most privileged. If a society cannot ensure a girl reaches college safely, cannot protect her from coercion in her own home, cannot guarantee her agency to say no, then it has no business pretending that she is ready to say yes. There is a room to limit POXO misuse, though peer consent exemptions, and the court have time and again raised the examination. Before 2012, Shivani, there was a scientific evolved studies, and which was found that the girls and the boys, because POXO is a gender neutral law, is widely misused, and those are being the adult children were being taken to this sexual activities. Consent was not defined, and that is why the Law Commission made an attempt, and the law was made in 2012. And when the law is made, that is based on the societal ethos, the study before that, and research material. Now, the one thing which is important here, traffic exploitations, vertical power imbalance, where the man is the older, richer, and authoritative, teacher, employer, neighbor, religious preacher. In such dynamics, what appears to be consent is often coerced compliance. When you have an age for voting, 18 years, when you have an age for going to the job, is 18 years, when you have an age, the coercing minors, there is no age defined, then there will be, in fact, the argument saying that there was, yes, the cases like love jihad, the poverty issue which is time and again being examined in the light of the personal laws, how will you deal with that? So boys and girls freely date. What is the analysis? The elite view versus Bharat's reality. What is the elite view? The push to reduce the age of consent is driven primarily by a metropolitan lens. Why? Boys and girls freely date.
No, one second. Can I come in here? No, one second. Ashwini ji, you are arguing as if urban reality is completely different to rural reality or semi-rural reality. But actually, people contend that even in semi-rural areas or rural societies, there is rampant teenage sex. There's nothing to say that they are not indulging in sexual behavior.
Plus, there is no concrete data which suggests that the rampant sexual act or the sexual assault with the children below the 18 years. Now, because of
One second, sir. I'm facing an issue with your link. I'll try and sort that out. But Satyamala, you want to come in here because two things. One, this whole argument that somehow it's a constitutional right of adolescents to have sex. I mean, this is stretching the argument too much. Everything cannot be deemed as a constitutional right. We live in a society, we all have rules and laws that we have to abide by. Tomorrow somebody will say it's my constitutional right to abuse a child. And some people, I mean, these countries that we are quoting, mind you, US, UK and all of these countries, I hope you know the gender discussion that is going on in these countries, where men are waking up one day and saying they are women, they want access to women only, places like bathrooms, and that pedophilia is nothing wrong but is just a sexual preference. We shouldn't make these so-called developed countries our basis for all arguments.
Well, I'll also address the issue of teenage pregnancy along with the issues that you have raised. Well, it is to say that just because somebody has not turned 18 doesn't have any political opinion, and just because somebody has not turned 18 doesn't have any emotions and will not want to engage in some kind of infatuation or some kind of a romance. Well, what happens is here we are ignoring completely that body and mind evolves, and it is a different concept for every individual. Having said this, it is a utopian concept if we agree or if we want to agree that sexual activity is completely absent or should remain completely absent under the age of 18. There is ample evidence that sexual activity between the age group of 16 to 18 is existing across the world, whether it is urban area or whether it is a rural area. In these circumstances, what is required is a support system and not policing and not a restrictive or a oppressive law. What we are trying to say here is that if there is a problem of teenage pregnancy, this teenage pregnancy kind of issues are coming to the forefront as a problem because there is no support mechanism. As of today, people between 16 to 18 are not able to exercise their right to explore their emotions, their bodies, and for that matter, they hide their emotions, their activities because of the fear of the law. And this leads to various issues such as sexually transmitted diseases, lack of education, lack of access to support, and therefore this leads to various issues such as teenage pregnancies. All this can be eliminated. Nobody is trying to say that there should be a lowering of age of marriage. In fact, marriage age should be equated and increased for females because the males are allowed to marry only at the age of 21 and females are allowed to marry at the age of 18. It is nothing to do with marriage. It is to do with people's emotions, and those emotions and their bodies are linked with rights which are enshrined in the Constitution of India. Nobody is trying to say that we want to open the market to everybody.
No, I understand what you're saying. I understand. There has to be a balancing act. But sir, the issue here is there is absolutely nothing to suggest, no study in the world that one suggests that lowering age will lead to more quote-unquote informed sexual behavior. That is the root of this entire argument, that they are intelligent, mature, adult enough. But actually that's not the case. I don't think anybody can argue after talking to a 16, 17, even 18-year-old. And I can tell you, and I can also tell you, and I feel very strongly about this, you cannot put the burden of consent on a 16-year-old girl. I'm sorry to say this. Even in a normal adult relationship, adult women, you know, the concept of consent, even for adult women, is a very tricky one. We see this in relationships that may be consensual or have a power differential.
Yes.
It's a whole different game. You're talking about a 16-year-old's
yes.
consent?
Completely agree with you, Shivani. Let's keep the subject of consent separate because it is a concept originating from the law of contract, which also is a contract between a male and a female. Of course, it's a more wider concept and it is evolving every passing year. Now, having said this, if there is an issue, if there is a problem that we are discussing, we have reached in the year of 2025. Of course, we are matured enough that we have learned till date that suppressing any problem is not the right way to solve that problem. Therefore, the right way to deal with this kind of a problem is to definitely find a middle path
Okay.
which will take care of the emotions of these people and allow them the freedom that they would want to exercise, along with the safeguards that can be put in place along with the legal mechanism.
Okay. Swati, you want to come in on this? Also, the fundamental
Shivani.
argument of constitutionality that has been brought in, because otherwise, actually, this falls in the legislative domain. You know, the only way you can argue to a court that they should intervene as far as the law of the land is concerned is on the basis of constitutionality. And very cleverly, it has been suggested that somehow it's a constitutional right to express bodily autonomy at 16 to 18.
Yes. My question is, if it's a right to have sex, if there is such a thing that a fundamental right to sexual autonomy or whatever, then why stop at 16? Why not 15? Why not 14? Why not actually 9? That is a question, because the whole argument is based on what teens want, what children want. Number one, children's consent, children's choice can be influenced. In fact, the most impressionable, the ages, that is children. Number two, and which is actually related to point number one, which is you are open the gates for advertising it, thereby also influencing choice. The moment you say sex at 16 is legally allowed, you are actually encouraging all these content makers, these OTT platforms, to bring out one web series after another, promoting it, because they can now promote it. So, I run a handle called Gems of Bollywood. We filed a complaint against a particular web series, I think 2 years ago, that showed a schoolgirl, a school uniform wearing girl, indulging in some sort of sexual activity. We complained against it, and those scenes had to be, cut from the web series. Now, at 16, if you are not able to do it, they're going to show a lot more, girls in school uniforms indulging in such activities. And you can't make children who are watching them, they're only associating all those visuals with girls and, boys wearing school uniforms. So the choice of children, the choice of teens is going to be heavily influenced by such content. And remember, 12 years ago, when actually POXO came into existence, we did not have, children did not have access to such smartphones. Children did not have access to internet-based content. In fact, we did not have OTT platforms.
Yeah, actually today,
back then.
we have these social networking sites that are actually bringing in more and more controls for teenagers. Because over the last 10 years, we have understood the pitfalls of what even social media is doing to these young minds. So today you've got the giants, the tech giants behind all of these networking and social media sites actually being implored that you have to cut out certain content for teenagers. And here we are talking about evolved minds and maturity and allowing them to have sex. I think it's actually going in the opposite direction of where the world and developed countries have come to the realization that actually children need to be allowed to be children for as long as possible. Even adolescents don't have adult mechanisms. They haven't seen life enough to make informed choices. But the other issue is also legal, and I want to go to Ashutosh with it. The Digital Personal Data Protection Act, for example, and many of acts in India, they describe a child as anyone under 18. So you change the age of consensual sex from 18 to 16, this will then fall foul of a lot of other Indian legal laws where a child is defined as under 18. Essentially, either their law will fall foul of other laws, it will create a whole, khichdi of sorts, it will create problems in our framework, in our execution, or all of those laws will have to be changed.
See, just because you will have to change some of the other related laws, it doesn't mean that a person having age of 16 to 18 will have no consent. Now, when you say that a 16-year or 17-year-old cannot consent for any sexual activity, then at the same time, if there was no consent, let's say by the minor girl, then will you not agree with her statement in the police records? If she says that she has been forced to do something, she has been forced, then her statement will be recorded, no? You will punish the offender or not, then you will agree to her non-consent, right? So here, when you agree to what she is saying, when the crime has been committed on her, At the same time, when she is making a statement that it has happened with her own consent, she was willing to do it, and it has been willingly done by her or maybe by him, then you will say no, your
No,
consent has
I tell
got
you
no
what.
value. So
Bec-
I no no 1 minute, 1 minute. Let me explain that. And these aspects were already seen by many of the countries, including United Nations, and that was the reason why many of the countries adopted. In fact, in our country too, before 2012, the same age 16 was taken into consideration. Now, when you say in Juvenile Justice Act, as I already explained earlier, you want to punish also a teenager from 16 to 18 years if
as
you
an
think he
adult,
or she
yes.
is matured enough. There has been instances where they have been tried as an adult, they have been,
But that
punished
is
as
done
an
case to
adult for
case,
rape,
right?
etc.
That is done
So
case to case. There was there
no,
was
no,
an entire
then
movement
you
to
mean to
bring the
say,
juvenile age
then
also
why
down in
the
India.
courts are required to quash such proceedings which are initiated when there was consent by the minor? Why
Okay.
it is required by the court?
I'll tell
Because
you
why
what,
the
on
court
the
is
issue
looking
of
at it?
consent, it's not as simple
Yes,
as a
I am
young.
also at the issue of consent
No, so
only.
that
I am also at the issue of
I'm
consent
only
only.
saying it
So
sounds
you
like a
are
black
trying
and
to
white. Please
suppress. No, you
understand,
are
it's
trying to
not a black
suppress
and white
the
issue.
willing. No, no.
Ashutosh, consent is not a black and white issue. That is what I'm trying to implore to
So
you. You may feel that if a girl says, yes, it was consensual, no, it was not consensual, it ends there.
so
Consent
based on that, then
itself,
courts have passed orders.
in
No,
a
no,
teenage
based
mind,
on
even in an adult mind, consent itself is a very murky concept. Please understand
based
that.
on based on those statements only, courts have passed orders. They
So
have
why do you want to
considered
complicate the
they
situation
have
further?
considered the
I'm
statement of a
saying, does
16-year-old.
lowering age complicate the matter further, or does it simplify our lives
No,
further?
no,
I don't think
no,
this
no.
case has been
See.
made, it simplifies anything.
What I'm trying to say, that if there is no consent by a girl or a boy in POXO, it is an offense. We know that very well. Why we want to
Under
punish?
POXO, there is no concept
Why?
of consent, sir. Under POXO, it is illegal if you have sex with a minor. There is no concept of consent. The concept of consent has been taken away in POXO precisely because consent is a
That's
very
what
murky
it has
background.
been. It has been lowered. It has been made 18 in that case. That is
Yes.
what I'm trying to tell you. But
Yes.
in the cases where the age is less than 18 and when there was consent, the courts have quashed those proceedings
Okay, so
because
I
there
am
was
saying
consent.
that case, I began by saying that case to case discretion is
Why you want
available
to
in
go case by
particular
case?
cases.
Why people should
Because you
suffer?
can't throw the baby out with the bath water. That's why.
No, that is why you see you cannot choose one after other. If
Okay,
somebody is not
all right.
able to to afford that much of heavy expenses towards litigations, that means that person will be punished.
Okay.
He will have no say
Ashwini, you want to come
because
in
he
on
has to
this?
hire good lawyers. He
Yes,
has
yes,
to
yes,
spend
yes,
money
yes,
to
Shivani,
safeguard himself on case to case
Final
basis.
comment, yes, Ashwini, yes.
Yes, two, 3 points, Shivani. Thank you, Shivani. Consent on paper is not consent in reality.
Yes.
And what is the most argument, Shivani, is that in the POXO case, even in is involving consensual adolescent relationship, there can be certain guidelines, but codifying such exceptions in law and weakening the deterrent framework, enabling trafficking and other forms of child abuse under the guise of consent, it would rise. And that 7.2% of Indian girls become pregnant before turning 18, despite that there is a law. And in West Bengal, this rises to 16.4%. And when there is a deterrent law, most adolescent mothers drop out permanently. Economic dependence and health risk multiply. So how can you choose between this science? Because at the age of 16, Shivani, silent epidemic manipulation, which would rise, and the having a fundamental right in certain cases, even the top court of the country has said you cannot take exception in everywhere in its fundamental right. My body, my choice. See, what have to? Child marriage, trafficking, forced conversions, and most adolescent mothers becoming children, girls becoming mother.
Yeah.
And that is why the POXO Act was brought. You must understand that online abusers can claim mutual consent.
Yes.
Older men may exploit minors under legal cover. Trafficking intent becomes legally ambiguous, and those under the love jihad is trying to manipulate the girls below the age of 18. They would get, because the law is interpreted. You see the Hadia's case, which
Okay.
came up to the Supreme Court. How can we forget all these things? So
All right.